It started in Concourse C, just past midnight. The airport smelled like burnt coffee and tired sweat. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, humming with that particular kind of flickering that grated nerves and frayed patience. I was slumped in a molded plastic chair outside gate C29, nervously bouncing my leg, staring at the "canceled" notice flashing on the departure board like a cruel joke. Flight 611 to Charlotte. The one I needed to catch to see my dying mother wasn't just delayed. It was dead in the air. My phone buzzed with a new update. Rebooking was only available after 10 a.m. I didn't have that kind of time. Mom had made it through surgery barely, but the nurse on the phone sounded bleak. "You should get here soon, Mr. Ellison. Tonight, if possible." I stood up, pacing. My heart thumped hard against my ribs. I needed a miracle, or at least a red-eye flight. That's when I saw the kiosk. It was tucked beside a defunct vending machine near a janitor's closet. A blinking neon sign read, "Midnight Air will get you there, no matter where." Weird slogan. Even weirder, I'd never heard of Midnight Air. No app, no website. But I was desperate. A man in a crumpled gray uniform stood behind the counter. He didn't smile. His name tag said Gerald in faded letters, but he looked more like a coroner than a customer service rep. Pale, wet eyes, voice like static. "Looking for a way out tonight?" he asked. I hesitated. "To Charlotte, as soon as possible." Gerald tapped something on his rusted terminal. "You're in luck. Flight 999 departs in 30 minutes. Gate 66. C66? That gate doesn't exist." He didn't blink. "It does for you." He handed me a ticket printed on thick, yellowing paper. My name was already on it. "How much?" I asked. "No charge," he said with a grim grin. "Just sign here." I signed. No questions. Just the sound of my pen scratching paper and something cold curling behind my ribs. I made my way toward the higher-numbered gates, past sleepy families, janitors mopping up soda spills, and TSA agents fighting yawns. C66 wasn't listed on any directory, but when I turned a dim corner past gate C50, I saw it. A rust-covered sign hung above an ancient-looking jetway. No security. No agents, just a single blinking light over a narrow hallway, pulsing like a heartbeat. My phone lost signal the moment I stepped in. Inside, everything was quiet. Too quiet. The air was stale, like an attic that hadn't been opened in decades. The carpet squished slightly underfoot, damp and soft. I chalked it up to a cleaning issue. The boarding door opened with a groan. A flight attendant stood just inside the aircraft. Her smile was wrong. Lips too wide, eyes too still, like a mannequin brought to life. Her uniform was old-fashioned, 1960s Pan Am style, but black as coal with blood-red piping. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Ellison," she said. "We've been expecting you." The interior of the plane was dim, lit by overhead bulbs that flickered like candlelight. The walls seemed narrower, the ceiling lower. Everything was hushed, like the plane was absorbing sound instead of reflecting it. There were passengers already seated, maybe 20. Each of them sat stiffly upright, staring ahead. No movement, no blinking. I took my seat near the back, next to a man in a suit who smelled faintly of sulfur and rotting leaves. He didn't acknowledge me. The door shut with a final hiss. The overhead lights dimmed further. The pilot's voice crackled through the speaker. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Midnight Air, Flight 999. Estimated arrival time, irrelevant. Please remain seated. We will be traveling through darkness." The takeoff was silent, no rumble, no thrust. Just a sudden jolt, like reality skipped a beat. I looked out the window. There was no tarmac, no sky, No stars, just swirling black mist, shifting like something alive, occasionally lit by brief flashes of faces. Screaming, twisting, reaching. The seatbelt sign dinged. The man beside me turned slowly. His face wasn't right. His mouth hung open wider than it should. No tongue, no eyes, just shadow and teeth. I screamed. Across the aisle, a woman stood up. Her flesh bubbled like it was boiling from the inside. She staggered forward, moaning in a language that sounded like crying backward. The flight attendants walked down the aisle, not to help, but to bind her. They whispered soothingly as they pressed her face against the overhead compartment until it cracked like porcelain. The lights flickered violently. Then it hit me. This wasn't a flight. It was a ferry. A crossing. "Where are we going?" I shouted. The attendant turned, her smile unchanged. "We only go one way, Mr. Ellison. You signed the waiver." I felt cold drip down my spine. I dug into my pocket, pulling out the ticket. Under my signature, fine print had appeared. "This ticket confirms your passage. 1 seat, 1 soul. Non-refundable." I ran. I bolted down the narrow aisle toward the cockpit. Every step felt slower, like I was running through tar. The other passengers watched me, not with eyes, but with knowing. I burst through the cockpit door. There was no pilot, just a mirror. And in that mirror, me, wearing the pilot's uniform. Face stretched into a permanent, soundless scream. The plane lurched. I fell backward into darkness. When I woke, I was seated again, but the seat was different, harder, taller. I was at the kiosk. Gerald was gone. The desk was now mine. The blinking sign above me read, "Midnight Air will get you there no matter where." A man approached, pale and panicked. "To Chicago. Anything tonight?" I smiled, wide, wrong, and frozen. "You're in luck. Flight 999, Gate C66. And with every ticket I hand out, I remember I was just trying to see my mother. And now I send others to hell. What would you have done if this happened to you? Let me know in the comment. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. It was supposed to be a routine turn. Fly out of Portland at 4 p.m., touchdown in Denver by 6:15, back in the hotel by 8, bourbon in hand, maybe call my daughter before she went to sleep. That was the plan. Instead, the storm rolled in fast. Faster than anything I'd seen in 20 years of flying. By the time we were 10 minutes out, Denver International lit up in red across every screen. Wind shear, lightning, runway closures, tower called it. Flight 287, divert to alternate. Return to Portland. Back we went. No angry passengers tonight. No applause on landing. Just tired people trudging back into the terminal like it had all been a bad dream. I helped my FO, Jake, lock up the cockpit, then walked the long jet bridge alone. My badge felt heavy around my neck. My back ached. But more than anything, I just wanted a drink. That's when I saw the bar. Not the usual overpriced beer pit next to Gate B9. This was tucked into a corner near runway 13, a stretch of the airport that hadn't been used in years. The neon sign above the door read, "The Holding Pattern," in warm amber letters. I didn't remember it being there before. Inside, it looked like a pilot's dream. Wood-paneled walls, leather stools, vintage aviation posters, soft jazz on a dusty jukebox. It smelled like aged scotch and saddle leather. Real inviting. A few people were scattered around, all in uniform. Captains, first officers, flight attendants. No one looked up. Behind the bar stood a tall man with gray temples and a spotless vest. He poured a dark bourbon without asking and slid it my way. "Rough weather tonight," he said. I nodded. "Denver shut down. Whole damn airport looked cursed." He chuckled. It has its moments. I downed half the drink. It burned, but smoother than anything I'd had in years. I blinked. "Nice place," I said, looking around. "We only open for certain travelers," he said. That was odd. I turned to glance at the other patrons. One woman, a flight attendant, raised her glass in a silent toast, her eyes hollow. Another man, a captain with silver wings, was staring at a photo on the wall like it held the meaning of life. That's when I saw it. The photo. It was me, standing on a tarmac in my old Delta uniform, smiling, holding my daughter. The edges of the photo were charred. My name was printed at the bottom. Captain Raymond Matheson. 2003 to 2023. I felt the blood drain from my face. "I'm not dead," I whispered. The bartender, if that's what he was, leaned closer. "Not yet. But you're delayed." The room grew cold. The bourbon turned bitter on my tongue. Outside the bar's window, which hadn't been there before, I saw runway 13. It was cracked, overgrown, but lit by blue flames. A plane sat on the edge, engines idling. Smoke curled from its wings. I stumbled backward, nearly knocking over my stool. "What is this place?" The bartender smiled gently. "Some call it limbo. Others call it the holding pattern. Everyone here missed their last connection." I scanned the bar. The faces I hadn't looked at closely before, now I saw them. Pale, distant. A woman missing half her arm. A man with soot on his cheeks. A young co-pilot whose neck hung at a strange angle. They weren't alive. Not really. And I wasn't supposed to be here. "I need to go," I said, heading for the door. The bartender didn't stop me, but the door didn't open. Behind me, the patrons began to hum, an eerie, low sound like a turbine struggling to start. Lights flickered. "You still have time," the bartender said, "but not much. You can take your seat at the bar, or you can board the plane." "What happens if I board?" He looked down. "You move on, fully. And the bar? You wait. Eventually, you take my place." I looked again at the plane outside. A shadow moved in the cockpit. I backed away. "I'm not done yet," I said. He gave me a long look, then nodded. A wind blew through the bar. The lights went out. When they came back on, I was in a hospital bed. I'd coded in the crew lounge. Cardiac arrest. My heart had stopped for 3 minutes. The doctor said it was a miracle. But I remember the bar, the drink, the photo. And every now and then, in the quiet hours of the night, I hear jazz. I smell leather and scotch. And I know runway 13 is still out there, waiting for my final boarding call. The first time I saw the layover lounge, I thought it was a joke. I'd been stuck in Terminal E at Chicago O'Hare for 7 hours. My flight to Seattle had been delayed over and over again, first due to weather, then crew timing, then some vague technical concern that no one seemed to be able to explain. The terminal was chaos. People were sleeping in chairs, babies crying, phones dying, tension thick in the air like cheap cologne. I was on the edge, hungry, tired, and anxious to get home. That's when a soft, musical chime played from the ceiling. A new voice came over the PA, not the usual robotic announcements, but a warm, honeyed tone. Passengers experiencing extended delays are cordially invited to the new layover lounge located just beyond Gate E27. Free food, recliners, entertainment, and more. No membership or boarding pass required. Simply present your delay notification. We'll take care of the rest. I blinked. People around me looked up too. Some chuckled. Others exchanged skeptical glances. But then, a man in a suit grabbed his roller bag and started heading that way. A couple followed. Then more. Like moths to a flame. Curious and desperate, I grabbed my carry-on and followed the crowd. Gate E27 was at the very end of the terminal, past a shuttered Cinnabon and an out-of-order escalator. A white-gloved attendant stood beside a frosted glass door with no visible handles. He smiled warmly. "Layover lounge?" I asked. He nodded and gestured for my phone. I showed him the delay alert. "Perfect. Right this way, Miss Rhodes. You're our guest now." The door hissed open. Inside, the chaos of the terminal vanished. The air smelled of lavender and vanilla. The lighting was soft and golden. Plush carpet muffled every footstep. It was beautiful. There were recliners, hundreds all neatly spaced out, each with its own tablet, blanket, and tray of snacks. Lounge music floated overhead. Attendants in crisp white uniforms walked silently, refilling drinks and offering hot towels. No one spoke, but everyone looked content. I hesitated for a moment, then I sat. The chair hugged me like a lover. Warmth spread through my spine. The tablet lit up with my name and a message. Estimated delay, 3 hours. Enjoy your stay, Jenna. I reached for a bottle of water, ice cold. Perfect. I closed my eyes. When I opened them, the lounge was darker. The lighting had dimmed to a golden dusk. The attendants were gone. The other passengers were still there, but slumped, unmoving, silent. A chill crept into my bones. I stood. My legs were weak, like I hadn't used them in days. I looked at the tablet. Delay extended. Thank you for your patience. No time, no explanation. I walked toward the door, but it was gone. Not closed. Gone. Just a blank wall where the exit had been. I turned to a man nearby. His eyes were open, but unfocused. Dry, like he'd been staring for years. I touched his arm. It crumbled. Dust, ash, clothes remained, but the body collapsed inward like a balloon popped in slow motion. I screamed. A speaker crackled. "Please remain calm, Miss Rhodes. Disruptive behavior will delay your experience." I ran. Every hallway twisted, every corridor led to another room, another recliner, another tray of food that never spoiled. Time didn't exist here. Eventually I found a mirror. My face, pale, hollow, lips cracked. But more than that, something behind my eyes was fading. That's when I realized the lounge wasn't built for rest. It was built for forgetting. It fed you comfort while your memories drained. It wrapped you in warmth while your identity rotted. I was becoming one of them, the forgotten. The delay was forever. I don't know how long I've been here now. Sometimes I still fight. Try to stay awake. Scribble my name on napkins. Repeat my memories. But the lavender smell is so strong, the recliner so soft. My tablet just says, "Enjoy your eternal layover, Jenna." And I think I will. Eventually. The delay announcement didn't worry me at first. Flight 782 to Sacramento is delayed due to weather conditions. We apologize for the inconvenience. It was my 4th layover this week. As a traveling HR consultant, I practically lived in airports, spreadsheets, gate changes, and vending machine dinners. I'd landed at Harlow Regional around 3:15 p.m. and was supposed to depart by 5:10. When the first delay came, I just shrugged and kept sipping my burnt coffee. The terminal was almost empty. Odd, considering it was supposedly peak hours. A few scattered passengers lounged in stiff plastic seats. Fluorescent lights buzzed above, flickering in a rhythmic, slightly hypnotic pattern. Outside, the rain hadn't stopped in hours. It didn't pour. Just drizzled in a constant gray sheet, blurring everything beyond the runway glass. At 6 p.m., I noticed something strange. A woman 2 rows down had been checking her watch repeatedly, like every 10 seconds for the last hour. A kid sat motionless on the floor with a Nintendo DS in his lap, not playing, just staring. The same gate agent had been behind the counter since I arrived. Her name tag read D. Herrera, but she hadn't moved, hadn't even blinked, it seemed. Then the announcement came again. Same voice, same cadence, same words. Flight 782 to Sacramento is delayed due to weather conditions. We apologize for the inconvenience. But this time the rain outside paused, mid-drip. It was as if someone had hit pause on the weather. I stood up. My heart was thumping now. Something wasn't right. I walked over to the food court, but the McBurger's kiosk was empty. No staff. No smell of fries. Just trays of food half-eaten, steaming slightly. A looping jazz tune echoed faintly through the overhead speakers, skipping every 20 seconds. I pulled out my phone. No signal. The clock on the wall blinked 6:12, then 6:11, then 6:12 again. I approached the gate counter. "Excuse me, is there any update?" I asked D. Herrera. She smiled faintly, too faintly, and said, "We'll begin boarding shortly through gate 46. "Gate 46? I frowned. "That's not listed anywhere." She blinked slowly. "It will be." I turned, and just like that, the overhead sign flickered, replacing C29 with gate 46 in flickering yellow letters. A man beside me mumbled, "Finally," and stood up. Others followed, silent, robotic. I hesitated, but curiosity won. I followed the trickle of passengers through a hallway I swore hadn't been there before. It was dark. The floor was carpeted but damp. Walls pulsed faintly as if breathing. My footsteps echoed unnaturally, delayed, like someone was walking half a beat behind me. We emerged into a holding area. Gate 46 was old, not retro, not vintage. Old, like a 1950s movie set. Brown wallpaper, rotary phones on the walls, yellowed signs, a thick smell of mothballs and ozone. The plane outside was massive. Silver, propellers still. It hissed smoke. The crew stood perfectly still on the tarmac, eyes forward. "Boarding now," a crackled voice whispered from a broken speaker. The others began moving toward the jet bridge. Their faces were calm, blank. I turned to leave. But the hallway was gone. Not blocked. Gone. Just a wall. I turned back. The last passenger boarded. And then I saw it. Their faces through the plane windows. Trapped. Screaming. Banging silently. But outside, still. I stumbled back. A steward stepped toward me. Tall. Pale. Jaw slack. "Miss Trent, you're next." "No," I whispered. "I want out." "There is no out," he said. "There's only onward. You've entered the loop." I backed away, my feet stuck. The carpet had turned to tar. The lights pulsed. Suddenly I was back in the terminal. Gate C29. Same coffee, same flickering lights, same announcement. Flight 782 to Sacramento is delayed due to weather conditions. We apologize for the inconvenience. But now the clock reads 3:15 p.m. Again, I've lived this day, dozens of times, hundreds maybe. I've tried everything, screaming, hiding, praying, following the loop, nothing works. Each time I board that plane, I see my face from the outside, staring out, silently screaming. And every time I refuse, I end up back here, at 3:15, in the terminal, waiting for a flight that will never come. Because gate 46 is always boarding, and it's always waiting for me. What would you have done if this happened to you? Let me know in the comment. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like, share, and subscribe.